They called it just a closet when they cleared it out, a small, dusty room with a mop, a radio, and a perfectly folded American flag in a shoebox labeled Property of V. Tate. Someone joked about it over coffee, said he'd probably watched too many movies. But then they opened the envelope tucked beneath the flag, and no one spoke after that. Inside, a citation bearing the seal of the Pentagon, medals no one on base had ever seen before, and a letter signed in pen, not print, by a three-star general. All for the man they thought had spent the last 10 years just cleaning toilets. If you believe real honor doesn't need to raise its voice, like and subscribe, because this story is about what happens when the one person everyone overlooks turns out to be the one holding the entire place together. Vernon Tate, 68, had been the janitor at Fort McKinley since before most of the base's junior officers had graduated high school. He was invisible in the way only someone without a title can be, always present, always moving, never acknowledged beyond the occasional doors locked again, or there's a leak in the women's latrine. He didn't mind, or at least he never showed it. He kept to himself, walked with a slight limp, and never missed a shift. Rumor had it he never even took sick days. Most of the young soldiers thought he was just a holdover, a base fixture like the peeling wall paint or the buzz of old fluorescent lights. Specialist Jason Morris, loud and proud at 23, called him the mop general to anyone within earshot. Said it with a grin that told you he thought he was clever. Bet he thinks he's saving the world one toilet at a time. Vernon never responded. Just nodded and moved on, his cleaning cart rattling quietly down the hallway. But not everyone laughed. Private Elena Cruz, new to the base, noticed things, the way he checked the same fuse panel every third night like clockwork, the way he paused outside the server room door even though he had no reason to be there, and how he always seemed to be writing something down on a folded index card he kept in his chest pocket. She once caught a glimpse, numbers, codes, and dates, not scribbles, but calculations. She asked him about it once. He just said, "Some of us clean things you can't mop up." She thought it was a joke. Until the night everything stopped working. The blackout hit at 0223 on a Thursday, power down, surveillance offline, the base completely blind. Officers scrambled. Radios buzzed with static. Morris barked nonsense about backup batteries. And in the middle of the chaos, Vernon Tate was already in motion. Not panicked. Prepared. He walked straight to the auxiliary power cabinet, opened it with a key no one else seemed to have, and bypassed the fried breaker with a portable generator he had quietly wired in months ago. Within 15 minutes, the lights were back, and so were the cameras. The security team credited the base electrician. Vernon didn't correct them. But Cruz knew. She watched from across the hallway, the way he calmly logged something into his card, then slipped it back into his pocket like none of it mattered. She started asking around, subtle at first. Anyone know where Tate came from? Most just shrugged. "He's always been here," they'd say. No one remembered hiring him. No one remembered when he started. He just was. Then came the stolen shipment, the one that vanished from the armory without a trace. Investigators combed the facility for days. Cameras caught nothing. Systems were scrubbed clean. But 2 days later, a flash drive appeared on the commander's desk with the words "Check the South Wing Archives" scribbled in Sharpie. Footage had been routed off-grid, quietly, methodically, through a backup server. The thief was caught. Still, Vernon kept cleaning, kept mopping, and Jace kept laughing. Maybe he's ex-CIA, he joked once in the mess hall. Or maybe he just reads too much Tom Clancy. But something shifted. Cruz noticed how some officers started nodding first when he passed. How a few even held the door. Still, he said nothing. He just walked the same route each day, eyes steady, card in hand. Until the announcement came. Retirement party. Thursday. Supply Wing Lounge. No RSVP required. Most assumed he wouldn't show up. Some figured he had no family. But that afternoon, at precisely 1,600 hours, Vernon walked into the lounge in a pressed uniform shirt no one had ever seen him wear. Then the room fell silent. 3 black SUVs pulled up outside. The base commander stood to attention. And out stepped a Pentagon envoy with a sealed commendation and a quiet salute. But all that was still a week away. Right now, Vernon was scrubbing rust off the emergency stairwell railing like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Because for him, it was. The job was the post. And you protect the post, even if no one sees you doing it. It started with a whisper, one of those half-laughed rumors that crawl through barracks late at night. They say the janitor cracked the shipment case. No one said his name at first. Just the janitor. But Private Elena Cruz had already stopped calling him that in her head. She called him Mr. Tate now. though he never asked for it. And as more oddities piled up, missed inspections that magically resolved themselves, digital system patches that appeared unrequested, supply logs that aligned too perfectly to be coincidence, she started digging. Nothing in the HR files. Nothing on LinkedIn. Not even a first name listed on the base directory. Just V. Tate, Maintenance Services. She visited Logistics HQ to cross-reference his onboarding paperwork. Blank. Access history. Wiped. She checked archived hard copies from 2013. Still nothing. Must have been grandfathered in. The clerk offered, clearly uncomfortable. Been here forever. But that wasn't an answer, and Cruz knew it. Meanwhile, Specialist Morris doubled down on his mockery, louder now, as if to drown out the unease creeping across the base. I swear he's got a back cave somewhere, he said, huddled with other junior officers, chuckling. Sleeps under the pipes with his mop like it's a rifle. Vernon walked by without a glance. He was carting a box of broken light fixtures, but Cruz noticed his other hand, tucked casually into his pocket, brushing against that same folded index card he always carried. That afternoon, Cruz spotted him kneeling beside the secured server room. No tools, just looking. She hesitated before approaching. You think something's off? She asked quietly. He didn't look up. Something's always off. Depends who's watching. Then he stood, nodded once, and walked away. She watched his slow gait disappear down the corridor, heart pounding like she'd just heard a sermon meant only for her. That night, she couldn't sleep. She called in a favor from a cousin at the VA Records Archive. I need a background check, she whispered. No paperwork, no trace. The next day, she got one line back. Vernon J. Tate, classified. Last public entry, 1972. Then sealed. Just like that. And that was when she knew. Whatever Vernon had done, it wasn't something they wrote on plaques or put in yearbooks. It was the kind of legacy carved into silence, guarded by files behind steel doors. The base, of course, kept moving. Officers barking drills, shipments arriving at the bay, brass giving speeches that meant nothing. But underneath it all, Vernon was still moving, still watching. He rerouted faulty alarm triggers no one had reported, recalibrated the thermal sensor by hand, even found a leaking chemical valve in the south corridor and patched it before Hazard Control filed the danger report. Every time Cruz tried to bring it up, he'd cut her off with a nod and a single phrase. Post comes first. She didn't fully understand it until the second breach. Someone had tried to siphon encrypted credentials through the East server uplink, a hole no one should have found unless they'd written the code themselves. Security flagged it 3 hours late. By then, the data was already gone. Morris was the one who found the unsecured laptop left behind. Must have been an outside contractor, he declared proudly, as if solving the mystery meant he'd prevented it. But later that day, Cruz found a USB drive slipped under her barracks door. Unlabeled, unmarked. She hesitated, then plugged it into a secure offline machine. Inside, time-stamped footage of the server corridor, unedited, looped twice, zoomed on the suspect's badge, and tagged with a file labeled Wrong Door. She brought it to command. 2 hours later, the suspect was arrested. No one asked where the footage came from. No one mentioned the janitor. Vernon didn't even break stride. But Cruz watched him that night. He checked the stairwell, tightened the fire door latch, scribbled something onto that card, and walked the same route he always did. That's when it hit her. This man wasn't just maintaining the base. He was protecting it, covertly, precisely, like a man who'd been trained to secure a compound long before anyone else knew it was vulnerable. A week later, it happened again, this time during a scheduled drone testing exercise. The data feed cut out mid-run. Security assumed interference. The commander shrugged it off. But Vernon was already walking toward the control center before the alarm even buzzed. Cruz followed, silently. He reached under the monitoring desk and flipped a small black switch beneath the frame. Instantly, the signal returned. Cruz glanced under the table and saw it. A manually rigged bypass relay, soldered by hand. No markings. Who put that there? She asked. He said nothing. Just looked at her, his face unreadable but kind. Sometimes you don't stop the threat. You make sure the right people are watching when it happens. Then he walked out. Cruz didn't sleep that night either. Instead, she went back to the closet Tate used, the one everyone ignored. She waited until after midnight and entered. Inside was no shrine. No maps on the wall. Just order. Spare batteries arranged by type. Tools wrapped in cloth. Fuses labeled in fine, small handwriting. And in the far corner, a small filing cabinet with 3 folders. Current weaknesses, fixed without credit, and pending failures. She didn't touch them. Didn't need to. She'd seen enough. The next morning, Jace Morris walked into the mess hall, laughing too loudly about a girl who'd mistaken a janitor for a war hero. Probably thinks his mop is a Medal of Honor, he sneered. Cruz stood up, her tray untouched. You ever think the reason we've never had a breach is because someone else already patched them? Morris blinked. What? She leaned in. It's easy to play soldier when you think you're the smartest guy in the room. Harder when you realize someone's been protecting you the whole time and never asked for a thank you. Then she walked out, leaving him in stunned silence. Because slowly, quietly, the truth was spreading. Vernon J. Tate wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't just a man with a mop. He was the last line of defense, and he never even raised his voice. They called it a casual send-off, an awkward flyer taped beside the vending machine in the break room, typed in Comic Sans, the words Janitor Retirement Party, Thursday at 4 p.m. in Lounge C. Sandwiched between announcements for lost earbuds and potluck duty signups. Most people assumed it would be 15 minutes of stale coffee and a crumpled card, maybe a joke or two about mop buckets and how no one ever saw him without a wrench in his hand. Elena Cruz showed up early anyway, hands tucked behind her back, heart beating a little harder than she wanted to admit. Vernon J. Tate was already there, seated in the far corner, same posture, same crisp shirt, same index card folded neatly in his chest pocket. He wasn't smiling, but he looked settled, like a man who knew exactly how today would go. And for the first 20 minutes, he was right. A few maintenance staff trickled in. One offered him a used flashlight as a gag gift. A lieutenant stopped by to say something generic about years of service and left before the donuts were unwrapped. Even Jace Morris showed up, leaning against the back wall, arms crossed, smirking like he'd already rehearsed his farewell joke. Cruz waited, uneasy. Then the hallway lights flickered. A rumble. Outside, 3 black SUVs glided past the windows like panthers moving through brush, unannounced, unmarked, precise. The door opened, and silence walked in. General Daphne Rhodes, 3 stars on her shoulder and more war in her eyes than any man in that room had ever faced, stepped into Lounge C without ceremony. Her boots struck the floor like verdicts. She didn't scan the room. She looked straight at Vernon Tate. And then, without fanfare, without flourish, she saluted him. A long, deliberate, regulation-perfect salute. Everyone froze. Even Morris. Rhodes held the pose, her voice steady as stone. Commander Tate. Vernon nodded once, rose to his feet. He didn't salute back. Not yet. Rhodes stepped closer, then turned to the room. I served under this man, she said. He wrote the first-generation threat response doctrine still in use across 7 bases. He ran silent counterinsurgency ops in 3 theaters and dismantled a rogue encryption ring in 1981 without firing a single shot. You spent 10 years walking past a man who once rewrote the entire defense grid of this country while bleeding out in a jungle he never got medals for. She turned to Morris, who now looked like he wanted to melt into the wall. And you mocked him because he carried a mop. The words hit like a rifle round. Morris opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Cruz saw him swallow whatever sarcasm he loaded. He chose to be here, Rhodes continued. After the Pentagon offered him a directorial seat in intelligence. He said no. He said, let me stay where I can be useful, where no one notices me. Those are the cracks where things fall apart. She reached into a briefcase handed to her by another officer and pulled out a sealed commendation, a navy blue leather folder embossed with the Department of Defense seal. In recognition of services rendered both named and unnamed, above and beyond the call, by authority of the Secretary of Defense, she read, placing it on the table. We hereby designate Vernon James Tate the recipient of the Defense Superior Service Medal. You could have heard a pin drop. Vernon finally saluted. Not to her, but to the room. To everyone who had overlooked him, and to the few who finally understood. He didn't give a speech. He just said, the post was mine, and I kept it. Then he nodded to Cruz, gently handed her the folded index card, and walked out, his step steady, his presence somehow heavier now that he was leaving. No music. No clapping. Just a room full of soldiers who had just learned what a real one looked like. By the next morning, the mop closet was empty. The maintenance log untouched. But Lounge C now had a plaque beside the door. The Tate Room, in honor of unseen watchmen. The base shifted, subtly. Officers triple-checked doors they once ignored. Recruits started asking questions about wiring protocols and breach paths. One even started keeping a pocket notebook. And Cruz? She started walking his old route, same order, same pace, every morning before sunrise. Weeks passed. A new janitor was hired. Young, loud, tried to change the rotation schedule on day one. Cruz corrected him gently, but firmly. We keep it how Mr. Tate had it. And that was that. Months later, a small wooden box arrived addressed to her. Inside, Vernon's shoebox of medals, a folded flag, and the card sheet thought he took with him. On the back was a note in his sharp handwriting. The watch doesn't end. It changes hands. You know what to do. She did. And from that day on, Fort McKinley never called him the janitor again.